Hey everybody, welcome to Gun Cranks. We've got some good news today. We finally got rid of Brent.
Bye, Brent.
Did we fire that guy or what?
I don't know. He just didn't show up. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay. Well, you might notice something a little different today. We got a special guest. Brent is out getting bionic body parts installed or something. And so we've got a special guest, Erick Gelhaus, editor of AmericanCop.com. Also instructor at Gunsight, and we are going to talk about ammunition for small guns for defensive use, and some of what we're thinking about might surprise you. Roy, do you have any small guns?
I would never admit to having any small guns in public.
Well, hypothetically, if you had a small gun, what kind of ammo might you carry in it?
Well, you know, I think what prompted this was the other day I was in my ammo stash and I stumbled onto a box of ancient duty ammo that I used to carry in 1978. And that was Smith & Wesson branded 158 grain lead semi-wadcutter ammunition for 38 Special. And that was actually our duty ammunition when I was on the San Diego Police Department then.
I thought, wait a minute. I thought it was cap and ball.
It was, well, that was just before that. We transitioned to centerfire revolvers then.
You started.
And yeah, after I started and shaved off my, my mountain man beard and everything. But, I remember at the time, we all really thought that ammunition was great and it shot really well. And, we all had 4 or 6 inch revolvers. And I have to say, there's a lot of bad guys that no longer walk the street, thanks to that ammunition. And now, it did have some penetration issues. I'll be the first to admit that. There were a lot of times. Yeah, it would kind of go through. But like the old timers would say, that's okay. It just makes 2 holes then. And it's hard to argue with that. But it got me thinking is in this day of modern semi-jacketed hollow point, solid copper, blitz round, Lehigh, flailing, magic bullets, is the lead semi-wadcutter or full wadcutter essentially dead when it comes to self-defense? And I say no. I say it's still viable.
I think Erick is being disagreeable too. I saw some head shaking. What's on your mind?
So, talking to buddies of mine and friends who've done the ballistics with this, they're seeing an awful lot of success with the full wadcutter leads. That out of the little J-frames, shooting ballistic gel, shooting any of the denim tests on the FBI side, they're seeing an awful lot of good performance out of a full wadcutter load. The semi-wadcutter load is a little bit easier to get out of a speed loader into the cylinder, but performance-wise, that full wadcutter is doing some really good work, according to guys who can shoot them through the gel and test them and see what's coming out in real-world shootings.
Can I interject a buffalo bore, who has a reputation for high-performance ammunition? They make full wadcutter, and they're hard casts, which I think is important because it cuts a really clean, hole, especially if you have to penetrate something, Erick, like you were talking about. But they make full wadcutter loads for 44 Special, 38 Special, 45 Colt, 44 Magnum, I think. And I'll tell you what, it's hard to argue with that. You've got, I believe his 38 Special one is a 150 grain full wadcutter at about 900 feet per second. And so, it surpasses a standard target wadcutter, which I seem to chronograph at around the 700 feet per second, out of a 4-inch gun. And, but they've always penetrated gel really well. But these other loads, it's very effective. I shot a doe with a 44 Magnum wadcutter load, and it was just like I hit it with a lightning bolt, it just, boom, just went right down. So I don't know why there's not a move toward that by the sort of major ammunition makers. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I think you touched on something very important. And if we're talking about smaller guns, and I'll translate that to barrel length, and here's where we get into velocity is king for performance of modern hollow point type bullets, right? So if you're talking a J-frame or a pocket gun with a 2 or 3 inch barrel, you're getting less actual velocity out of that thing. And that's where traditional modern hollow point bullets start to get a little wonky. They start to go borderline. Are they going to expand or are they just going to be a solid thing going through whatever it is you're shooting at? So I might commit heresy here, and I'm going to talk about 380. I love 380s, totally comfortable with them, great caliber, lots of benefits. But you should be aware, if you're shooting a 380 out of a small gun, it's right on the fence as to whether most modern ammunition is going to expand when it hits a somewhat realistic target, right? I mean, you guys know I'm kind of geeky on this stuff and do lots of Jell-O testing and those kind of things. If you shoot it into water or plain just bare gelatin, yeah, they're going to expand most of the time and do what they're supposed to do. You put anything in front of that, clothing, layers, glass, whatever, not so much. You might be surprised at how poorly a lot of ammunition performs when you start doing that stuff. So something to think about is also loading your small semi-autos with a hard cast type load.
I once experimented loading 380s with a semi-wadcutter bullet, and everyone said, well, no, you're stupid. That'll never work. It's not going to feed. Actually, I was shooting a SIG P, what's the 230? The 380 SIG kind of on the big size? Yeah. And it ran great. It fed them perfectly. We didn't have gel, but my gosh, I had a chronograph and I was getting about 900 feet per second with this. It was about a 95 grain, 100 grain bullet. And at the time, I went around, I showed people and I said, what's wrong with this? Why don't we do this? And they just dismissed it. And I think maybe there might be an interesting market for some of that stuff. As you say, Tom, especially in the smaller calibers. You brought up a really good point, though. I found with these high performance loads in these little short guns, you end up with a handful of fire breathing dragon when you shoot it sometimes, and whenever you shoot a 148 grain wad cutter out of a J frame, it's like, that was okay.
Yep.
And then you look at the gelatin, it's got 16 inches of penetration in the gelatin. I don't know. I think the major manufacturers are missing out on something here. And nothing would please me more to see a federal, 150 grain hard cast wad cutter 38 special at 900 feet per second out of a real gun.
What about alternative solid bullets? And what I'm thinking about here is Black Hills, their Honey Badger line. That's an example of one I really like in 380. It's a solid copper projectile, but it's not supposed to expand. It does its thing in other ways with the bullet shape. But you don't have to worry about borderline velocity there. One, it's lighter, so it's going to move faster out of a short barrel gun. But it's designed to do its thing without an expansion requirement.
Yeah, I agree. Since moving to the country here years ago, we have a certain amount of what I like to call varmint population, raccoons and, groundhogs and armadillos and things like that. And so it's been interesting because I've actually been able to test these 380, 32, 38 special kind of ammunition on these critters when you have to shoot them for different reasons. And I shot an armadillo not too long ago, and I've shot them before with standard hollow point 380s, and you have to shoot them 2-3 times, and they jump up in the air and they run off usually. And I shot this one with a Honey Badger 380, and he was dead right there. I mean, it was significantly different. So I don't want to say magic bullet, but I think there's something to that. Reliable penetration. It does the damage. It doesn't have to open like a hollow point, because I don't think these hollow points were opening up on this, like on an armadillo or something. So
they're probably not after going through that shell, on the outside. So
yeah, so it really brings up an interesting point. So I don't know, Erick, do you have anything to add to this?
Just real briefly, once I got kind of introduced to the wad cutters, that's what I carried in my J frame as a backup gun.
Me too.
Was the 148 grain wad cutters. I found them to be more reliable. Last time I had to qualify with my old organization with a J frame, I had the round nose kind of ball rounds jumping out of the cartridges and locking up the revolver, whereas the wad cutters weren't doing that. They were staying inside the case. I wasn't having any issues with stoppages caused by ammo. So I'm real happy with the 148 grain full wad cutters for a little J frame backup gun.
Yep. I agree.
Another point in favor. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, we're just shattering all the myths today, aren't we? All right, guys. I'd say we go ahead and wrap this up. I would maybe leave our viewers with one key point. Don't assume. If you get the opportunity, go out and test your ammo. You know, save a bunch of old wet newspaper and stick some denim in front of it, or do whatever you can. But test it out yourself. See what it actually does. It's enlightening sometimes. All right, so I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. Don't forget to check out AmericanCop.com, see some of Erick's work, and of course, find more about us at AmericanHandgunner.com and GunsMagazine.com. Thanks for joining us.